What's up developers, it's Dari here and welcome back to a new video where I'm going to show you 12 collection methods I love to use. I recently started using my GitHub more and more and I was thinking about adding a repository for every video that I create with a usage section at the bottom, which will basically show you how the code works in text, and you can go over stuff after you have watched the video. If you are interested in this, let me know in the comment section down below so I can continue on creating content like this, since it might take a while as well. Most of you guys out here know that I love working with Laravel, and especially things that only Laravel provides. And one of those things are collections. We have touched on collections quite a lot on my YouTube channel, and I want to do this video to dive a little bit deeper into collections, followed with a list of available methods that I like to use. If we open a new tab and navigate to laravel.com, let's search for collections. If we scroll down to the available methods that we have right here, you'll see a ton of methods that you can perform on your collections. We won't be going over all of them because the video will be more than an hour, but I'll try to point out some cool ones that might be interesting in your further career. Before we dive into the methods, let's talk about collections. I think that most of us know that a collection is basically an array, but you can do a lot more with it. You can see it as an array on steroids, like a lot of steroids. The coolest part about it is the available methods on the screen right now that we can perform on our collection. For this tutorial, I don't want to use the browser, and mainly because it's a lot of work to constantly navigate to the browser, refresh it, just to show you stuff. So what I want to do is to create a custom command that will print out the data of our controller, where we will play around with our collection. Inside the CLI, let's perform PHP Artisan make command called show method. Let's add a parameter by adding the double dash. Command is equal to show method. Hit enter. Before we open the custom command file, let's also create a controller to get things out of the way. Let's say PHP Artisan make controller called collections controller. Now let's open the controller first inside the app, HTTP, controllers, and the collections controller file. Let's create a method by saying public function index, and let's return a piece of text right here. Now we're doing this just to make sure that the flow works right before we work on our collection. If we then open our custom command inside the console, commands, and the show method file, we have defined our signature, but the description is still command description. So let's change it to this command will show you the index method of the collections controller. Today's video is brought to you by Cloudways, a managed hosting platform for your applications. Cloudways has enabled businesses to scale and reach new milestones instead of worrying about server hassles. With reliable 24/7 support, Cloudways offers complete peace of mind from server-level nightmares. Furthermore, its superior tools and works enhance your productivity so you can focus on creating incredible experiences with your applications. It's a fast managed solution for agencies, SMBs, and e-commerce businesses. What I personally like about Cloudways is their slogan, moving dreams forward. The next step is making sure that we call the index method of our collections controller inside the handle method of our Artisan command. Then it will make sure that whenever we're returning something from the controller, it will be printed out in the CLI. This can easily be done by initializing a new instance of the collections controller. So let's remove our return value. Let's create a new object called collections controller and set it equal to a new collections controller. Make sure that we pull it in by hitting enter, add parentheses and a semicolon. Then on the line below, we could easily add a print_r, where we want to print out the collections controller object, and we want to chain the index method that we have inside the file. If we save it, navigate to the CLI, and perform the PHP Artisan show method command, you see that the text of text has been printed out and the flow works fine. So from now on, we don't need to navigate to the browser to show data that we have inside the controller, but we can just perform the CLI command which will show the data. I think that we're ready to kick off the actual content of this video. I want to start off with some important and useful methods that you can chain on your collections. Whenever you perform them, make sure that you think about the solution in PHP code. Doing this, you will see definitely the differences between PHP and Laravel. If we close off the Artisan command, we have our collection. So let me make the terminal bigger as well. Let's remove our return text. And what we're going to do right here is defining a variable called collection, which will be equal to the collect method. The collect method accepts one param, which will be brackets. So basically an array, and let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Before we chain any method right here, let's perform our command. So let's say return variable collection. Inside the CLI, let's perform it. Let me make the terminal a bit bigger. All right. You see a collection object with an array inside of it, which is correct since once again, we're passing in an array inside the collect method. If you want to return the content of the collection without the underlying array, you can chain the all method to it. So let's say that we want to chain right here the all method. Save it, hit it again. And right here, you'll see that the collection is gone and we're only seeing the array part. There might be a chance where you want to know the average of an array. Instead of using the array sum method, then divided by the count, you can easily chain a method called avg. Save it, I'll run it in the CLI, and you'll see that the average is 3. Let me actually show you what the difference will be with calculating the average in PHP versus the average in Laravel. It will probably look something like this. Variable average is array underscore sum, accepts one param, which will be the collection. Then we need to divide it by the count of the collection. This piece of code right here has been done with one method that we just chained on our collection. Easy, isn't it? Let's remove it because I just don't want to see PHP code right here. The next method will be the chunk method, which actually is a method that I have used before in projects. The chunk method will simply break or split a large group of a dataset into a smaller group of data. So it basically looks at the entire array or collection and split them into chunks. If we replace average with chunk, we need to pass in a size as a parameter because we're having an error right now. So inside the parentheses, let's say that we want to split our array. We have 5 values in pieces of 2. Let's run it in the CLI, scroll up, and as you can see, we have one array right here with value 1 and 2. Then we have another array with value 3 and 4. And the last one is just number 5. So when will this be useful? Well, think about the Bootstrap grid system, for instance. With the chunk method, you can display items based on the amount of eloquent values you got from your database. The next method is actually a pretty cool one as well. Sometimes you might want to combine 2 arrays as key and values. In order to test this out, we do need to create a new value and change up our collection a little bit. Let's first remove the chunk method. And let's remove the data that we got inside our collect method as well. Inside our collection, let's define the keys. So let's say name and language, for instance. On the line below, we can define a new variable called combined and set it equal to the previous collection. So let's say collection. Chain a method called combine. And we're going to give the name and language a value of brackets, let's say Dari. And I'm learning, let's say Laravel. Let's not forget to change our return value to combined. Save it, hit the arrow up and run it. And right here, you can see that our keys are name and language, and our values are Dari and Laravel. Now the next method can be performed in multiple ways, and it will be the contains method. What it will do is basically looping over your collection to see if a value exists in your collection. Let's clean up our code again. Let's remove the combined variable. Let's return collection. And let's remove name and language. Let's add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. Now you can either chain your method right here inside the collect method or on the return value. And I think it's easier to read on the return value. So let's say that our variable collection contains, it accepts one value, which will be the key. And in our case, let's say 5. So let's see if variable 5 exists inside our collection. Save it, perform the command, and you'll see that the return value is 1. And that's kind of the issue of returning stuff. So let's wrap it inside a DD. Save it, hit the arrow up, you can see that it does exist. And if we change it to 6, you'll see that the return value is false. The second method is to pass in a key and value pair in the contains method to see if the combination exists. This is actually a very useful method as well, since you might run into situations where you want to see if a name or product exists inside the database. So let's change up our collection. Let's hit enter. Let's add another set of brackets with a key of name and the value of Dari. Outside of our brackets, comma, another set of brackets. Let's say the name is now John. And the last one is name, let's say Michael. Then let's remove our DD, because right now we could create an if statement. And let's say that we want to see if the collection contains the key of name and the value of Dari. Return true. I wrote down return with a capital R. All right. Else return false. Save it. Hit the arrow up, and you can see that the output is true because the key name has a value of Dari. And if we change it to Dari2, save it, hit the arrow up, the output is false. All right, let's remove our if statement and let's get rid of all the arrays that we got, and let's go back to all the integers. With PHP and in Laravel, there's a count method where you can easily count the values of an array. The same count method can be chained to a collection or array as well. Let's return our collection again, and let's chain the count method. Save it, perform the command, and as you can see, the return value is 5, which is correct because we have 5 numbers inside our collection. There's also a method which is called diff that will compare 2 collections or arrays. It will then return the value in the original collection that are not present in the given collection. Let's keep our collection variable right here, and let's create a new one on the line below called difference. And we're going to basically see if there is a difference with the collection variable that we have. So what we're going to do is to say collection diff, and what we want to do is to pass in an array right here of, let's say, 2, 4, 6, and 8. We're not going to return the count, but we're going to return, let's say, the difference, and we're going to chain the all method. Save it. This should return the value 1, 3, and 5 because 1, 3, and 5 does exist in the collection variable, but it does not exist in the difference variable. Let's run it. All right, we have a collection of 1, 3, and 5, and as you can see, 2 and 4 does exist, so they are not printed out. Before we dive into some complex collection methods, I want to show you a pretty cool one, which is the DD method. We all know how useful it is to use a DD, so a die dump. It's basically my go-to method when I want to debug an application. And it's very simple to use on collections as well. Let's remove variable difference, and let's return our collection, and let's chain the DD method. Save it, perform the command. And as you can see right now, it has been printed out in the same way you usually see it inside the browser, but only the array part instead of every piece of data you will see in the browser. There's actually a pretty fun and interesting method which is called flip. What it will do is flipping all the items keys in a collection with their given values. To showcase this, we need to change up our collection again. So let's remove all the integers, hit enter. Let's say that my name is Dari. My job is a web developer, and let's say that my country is the Netherlands. This is alright. Our keys are name, job, and country, and the values are Dari, web developer, and the Netherlands. Outside of our collection, let's return the collection, but instead of saying DD, let's say flip. Save it, perform the command. And right now you can see that our keys are our values right now. So name, job, and country. And the values are our keys. So Dari, web developer, and the Netherlands. Usually when you perform eloquent queries, you pull in a lot of data that you might not need. For that, you can use the forget method, which will remove an item from the collection by a given key. Let's replace our flip method with forget. Inside the forget method, we need to pass in the key that we want to forget. So let's say in single quotes, job. Let's run it in the CLI. And right here, you can only see my name and country, and the job has been removed from our collection. All right, let's focus on some more complex methods right now. The first method I want to talk about is the each method, which is nothing more than a for each loop that is wrapped inside of a higher order function. Whoa, let's rewind. What is a higher order function? You can see a higher order function as a function that takes another function as a parameter, returns a function, or does both. Since we're going to work with a bit more complex methods and functions, I'm thinking about replacing the collection that we've got by interacting with our database through Eloquent. The easiest way to do this is through the users table, since the factory and seeder have been predefined for us by Laravel. But first, we do need to set up our database in order to interact with it. So let's open the .env file. Let's change our database name to Laravel_collections. Let me make the terminal a bit smaller. My password is Dari1234. Save it. We need to create the database. So let's say MySQL. Create database Laravel_collections. All right. We're not going to add data manually, but we're going to open a database seeder inside the database folder. So we need a seeder and a database seeder. Let's uncomment the user factory line that we have right here and change the parameter of factory to 50. So we're going to create 50 rows. The user factory is already defined by default. So what we can do right now is to migrate our database, tables, and seeder at the same time. Let's perform an exit inside the CLI. And let's perform PHP artisan migrate --seed. And as you can see, we have migrated our tables and we have added a database seeding, which has been completed successfully. We will test it out in a bit, but we're going to pull it inside the controller. Let's close off the database seeder tab and the .env tab. We're also going to clear out everything that we got inside our index method. And it's time to pull in all users from the database. It's better to create a new variable called users and set it equal to the user model. Hit enter to pull it in, all. This will pull in all 50 users that we just added. Let's return variable users to see it. And let's make the terminal a little bit bigger. Oops, that was the wrong command. Let's perform the show method. And right here, let me scroll up to, all right, the key number 49. It's finally time to implement the each function of our collection. Variable users contains a collection with all users that are available inside our database. What we can do is to go on the line below, write down variable users, chain a method called each, and close it off with a semicolon. Inside the parentheses, we're going to pass in a callback function. So let's say function, parentheses, curly braces, and let's hit enter. Now the function accepts two parameters. Well, one that is actually required, which will be variable value, comma, and the second one is optional, but I prefer to pass it in just in case we need it. So let's say variable key. So variable value will be a single user, and the key will be the keys of the value. So inside our users, let's create a new variable called user and set it equal to the value, brackets, single quotes, name. So variable user that we got right here will be equal to all usernames. Now we need to do something, so let's echo out variable user and let's concatenate a pipe. And let's actually remove the return user that we got outside. Run the command inside the CLI, and right here you'll see a complete list of all usernames inside our users table. Pretty cool, isn't it? But how does this look in PHP? Let me quickly show it to you. We need to create a new variable called users and set it equal to a set of brackets. Then we have the for each loop. Inside the for each loop, we're going to loop over all users as a single user, and we have the key. Then variable user will probably be equal to something like the user bracket single quotes name, and outside of our loop, we're going to return variable users. Whoops, this should be variable user, excuse me. So yeah, let's compare them. It looks quite a bit better what we had right here, right? We can all agree on that. But why would you use the each method compared to what we have right here? It makes sure that it hides the implementation of the for each loop, but it also improves overusing the for each loop directly as soon as you can get into chaining functional operations. Why would you define an empty array right here above the loop, set it equal to a value inside the loop, and then print out the value outside of the loop again right here? There's one pretty important thing you got to keep in mind. The each function doesn't return anything. Therefore, you should only use the each function when you want to perform specific actions. Alright, let's continue on with the next method, which will be the map method. Just like with the each method, you can create a complete separate video on the map method. Whenever you want to apply a given callback function to each element of a collection, you can use the map method. Then the callback function will modify the item and create a new Laravel collection for them. So let's do something with our variable users again. So let's say variable users, chain the map method. Inside the map method, we're going to call back a function. Once again, we're going to pass in the variable item and variable key. Then inside the map method, let's print underscore variable item name. Save it, perform the command inside of the CLI, and you'll see the same output as the each method. So what's the difference right here? The output might be the same, but semantically it's incorrect. Map will basically transform one array into another array. If you don't want to transform anything, you shouldn't be using the map function. On the other hand though, the each function should be used when you want to return something in your callback and you want to perform some action with every element in an array. The next method is the filter method. It is mainly used to filter out elements of an array that you don't want. But it works a bit weird, since you got to tell the filter which elements you want to keep by passing a callback that returns true if you want to keep the element, and false if you want to remove it. Keep in mind that the filter method doesn't change up your data. You're basically going to filter out certain elements based on a condition. So let's remove everything that we got except for the users collection. We're going to create a new variable called filtered and set it equal to users, and we're going to chain the filter method. Once again, we're going to call back a function. Inside the function parentheses, we're going to pass in the value and key, and inside our function, we're basically going to return variable value, brackets, single quotes ID, where it's greater than 48. Outside of our loop, we're going to dd, let's say filtered, and chain the all method. Inside the CLI, let's perform the command. Well, this is too much data. Let's actually replace the dd with a print underscore r. Alright, let's scroll up. Where do we need to go? Right here. You can see that we have ID number 48, and if we scroll up, you'll probably see 49 as well. Right here. By using the filter method, we're going to tell our application to filter through the entire users list, look at their ID, and pass me back every ID that's higher than 48. Up until now, we printed out the names of our users in a big string. You can also keep it inside a collection by using the pluck method. Now let's remove everything that we got once again, and let's return variable users and chain the pluck method. Inside the pluck method, we got to define a key that we want to pluck from our collection. So let's say single quotes name. Save it, perform the command. Now let's scroll to the top. Right here, you'll see a collection with an array inside of it, with an integer as a key, which starts at 0, obviously, and the value is only the name of that specific row. Sometimes you might run into a situation where you want to double check if a collection is empty or not. For that, you can use the isEmpty and isNotEmpty method instead of DDing an entire collection. Instead of returning a value, let's replace it with a DD again, because it's either true or false. Let's say variable users, and let's chain the isEmpty method. Save it, refresh it. You'll see that the return value is false because our users collection is not empty. And if we replace isEmpty with isNotEmpty, save it, you'll see that the output is true because our users variable is not empty. Before I wrap up the video, I want to show you one more thing that I did mention in the beginning of the video, and that's chaining multiple methods together. At the moment, we just covered single methods that we can chain on a collection or array, but you can obviously chain multiple methods together as well. Let's do it step by step. So we're going to print it out before we add a new method. So let's remove our DD and let's return variable users and let's pluck the name only. Save it or refresh it. You should see a total of 50 rows. Now let's go right after variable users, hit enter and tab it up until it's below the variable users. Then let's do the same thing after pluck, because we're going to chain another method called accept, which accepts two params. The first one is what we want to remove. So let's say where ID, comma, is value 49. Perform the command, and right here you can see that ID number 49 is gone, and the last one is ID number 48. Now let's chain one more method right here, which is the skip method. In the skip method, let's pass in a count of 40, and this will remove the first 40 elements from the beginning of a collection. So key number 0 up until 39. Save it and perform it inside the CLI. And if we scroll up, you can see that the starting ID is 40 and the last one is 48. Now this example didn't make sense though. It's not something you'll be using in real life examples, but my idea was to show you that it is possible to achieve a lot without using loops, if statements, and so on. This was it for this video. If you do like my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button.